My wife wore that ring for 35 years. It wasn't just gold, it was her soul, her promise, her memory. When she passed, I kept it close. The one piece of her I still had. And when my son got married, I made the mistake of trusting his new wife with it. Weeks later, I found out she had pawned it for handbags and shoes. When I confronted them, they laughed. They told me to move on. But what they didn't know was that the house they lived in, the one they called their dream home, was still legally mine. And when I was done, they had nothing left, not even a front door to slam in my face. Before I get into how I turned the tables on my own son, let me ask you this. From where are you watching this story? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and if you enjoy true stories of betrayal and revenge, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps more people find these videos. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next story. Alright, let's begin. My name is Michael, and this is the story of how the people I loved most betrayed me in the cruelest way imaginable. But before I get to the betrayal, before I tell you how my own son laughed when I begged him to give back the last piece of my late wife, I need to take you back to the beginning when life still had meaning. I met Clara when I was 22. She was nothing like the other girls in town. While most of them wanted to talk about clothes or gossip, Clara had a mind sharp as a blade and a heart soft as velvet. She wanted to build a future, not just chase thrills. The first time she laughed, I swear, the sound settled something restless inside me. It was like the world had been waiting for me to meet her. I wasn't rich, I wasn't handsome, but I was determined, and when I saved up enough money to buy her a ring, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't big, just a simple gold band with a modest stone. Still, when I knelt down and asked her to marry me, her eyes lit up like I had placed the entire world in her hands. That ring became more than jewelry. It was a promise. Every day she wore it. Through the good years and the hard ones, through the fights and the makeups, through childbirth and sickness, that ring carried the weight of our love. It became a part of her, a part of us. When our son Daniel was born, Clara was the kind of mother every child deserves, patient, warm, and fiercely protective. I worked double shifts at the factory while she stayed home, raising him, teaching him, guiding him. I'd come home exhausted, and there she'd be, in the kitchen, wearing an apron dusted with flour, her hand catching the light as that ring gleamed. That sight kept me going. But life is cruel. When Daniel was 12, Clara fell sick. At first it was just fatigue, then the tests, then the diagnosis. Cancer. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room, staring at the doctor's lips move, but the words felt unreal, like someone else's nightmare. For 3 years, I watched the strongest woman I knew fade before my eyes. She tried to smile, tried to laugh, even when the pain racked her body. And that ring, she never took it off, not once. She used to tell me, as long as I'm wearing this, I'm still your wife, still Daniel's mother. No sickness can take that away. When she passed, I felt like half of me had been buried with her. The house grew quiet, unbearably quiet. I'd walk into the bedroom and expect to hear her humming, but there was only silence. Daniel cried for days. He'd wake up screaming at night, calling for his mother, and I tried to be strong, but the truth is I was broken. The only thing I had left of her that felt alive was that ring. I couldn't bear to bury it, couldn't bear to lock it away. I kept it close, in a small wooden box, sometimes holding it in my palm, like it could still give me strength. That ring became my anchor, my reminder of the woman who made me a better man. Raising Daniel alone wasn't easy. I had to be both father and mother. I made his lunches, helped him with homework, tried to show up at his school plays even if it meant running from a late shift, covered in sweat and grease. I gave everything I had so he wouldn't feel like he'd lost everything. Maybe I gave too much. Maybe I was too soft on him because I felt guilty that his mother was gone. I worked harder, bought him things I couldn't afford, and forgave mistakes that should have been lessons. I thought I was protecting him. I thought I was keeping Clara's memory alive by raising him with love. Years passed. Daniel grew into a man. He got his degree, landed a decent job, and soon after, introduced me to Isabella. From the moment I met her, something inside me shifted. She was beautiful, polished, and confident, too confident. Maybe her smile was perfect, but her eyes didn't shine with love for my son. They scanned, they measured, they calculated. Still, Daniel loved her, and I wanted him to have the happiness I had once known. So I ignored my doubts. I smiled, shook her hand, and welcomed her into our family. When they announced their engagement, I went home that night and opened that old wooden box. Inside was the ring, Clara's ring. I held it in my hands, trembling. I could almost hear her whisper, "Pass it on, Michael, let it live on in the family." I thought about what it would mean to give it away, to let another woman wear the very ring that symbolized my entire marriage. My instinct screamed to hold on to it. But another part of me, the part that still wanted to honor Clara, told me it was right, that passing it to Daniel's wife would be a way of keeping her alive in our family's story. So, against my hesitation, I did it. At the engagement dinner, I stood up, holding the box in my hand. My voice shook as I said, "This ring belonged to my wife Clara. She wore it every day of our marriage. It's more than gold and stone, it's love, It's sacrifice, it's family, and tonight, I want Isabella to have it." The room clapped. Daniel hugged me with tears in his eyes. Isabella smiled wide, flashing it to her friends and family like a trophy. For a moment I felt proud. I thought maybe I had done the right thing, but somewhere deep inside, something in my gut twisted. Something whispered that I had just made a terrible mistake. At the time, I couldn't imagine just how right that gut feeling was, because that ring, the last piece of Clara I had left, was about to be treated like garbage. And my own son would laugh in my face when I asked for it back. After the engagement dinner, I told myself I'd done the right thing. I had passed on Clara's ring, the symbol of our love, to the woman who would carry our family forward. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. For the first few weeks, every time I saw Isabella, she wore the ring proudly. She flashed it to her friends, her co-workers, even on social media. "Vintage gold," she called it in one post, snapping a picture of her manicured hand. I winced at the word vintage. To me it wasn't vintage. It was Clara. It was her laughter, her sacrifices, her life. But I told myself I was being too sensitive. Young people have their own way of speaking. As long as the ring was with her, as long as it stayed in the family, maybe Clara's memory would live on. Still, little things began to gnaw at me. One afternoon, I stopped by their apartment to drop off some old photo albums I thought Daniel might like. Isabella opened the door, her eyes darting down to the cardboard box in my hands. "Oh, old pictures," she said, her voice flat, uninterested. "Yes," I told her. "Your husband was just a boy in these, thought he might want them." She forced a smile, took the box, and set it on the floor like it was junk mail. Then my eyes fell to her hand, the ring, only it wasn't there. I tried not to stare, but the absence was glaring. My chest tightened. "Not wearing the ring today?" I asked, as casually as I could manage. She froze for a fraction of a second, then laughed. "Oh, that old thing. It's at the jeweler's. Needed resizing." Her words pricked me like a needle. Old thing. That ring was not an old thing. That ring was my wife's memory. But I bit my tongue, forced a smile, and nodded. Daniel walked in then, all smiles, wrapping his arm around her. "Dad, didn't know you were coming by." He kissed Isabella's temple, oblivious to the tension in the room. I didn't press. Not that day. But when I left, something inside me stirred a shadow of doubt I couldn't shake. A week later I invited them both over for dinner at my house. I cooked Clara's old recipes, hoping to share some warmth, some family tradition. We sat at the table, laughter filling the air, but my eyes kept flicking to Isabella's hands. She was animated, telling stories, gesturing dramatically, but still, no ring. Finally, I asked, "Isabella, did you ever get Clara's ring back from the jeweler?" The room went quiet. She blinked, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, yes, but I don't want to wear it every day, you know. I don't want to scratch it. It's so delicate." Daniel chuckled, rubbing her back. "She's just being careful, Dad. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Clara wore that ring, scrubbing dishes, folding laundry, planting flowers in the dirt. She never once took it off, not even in the hospital. That ring wasn't delicate. It was strong, just like her. I forced another smile, but something was wrong. I could feel it. And then came the moment that made my blood run cold. It was 2 weeks later. I was walking past a downtown pawnshop, a place I rarely paid attention to. But something in the display window caught my eye. A gold band, a modest stone, simple, familiar. My heart stopped. I stepped closer, pressing my face to the glass. My hand shook. No, it couldn't be. It had to be coincidence. But then I saw it, the tiny scratch near the setting, the one Clara got years ago when she was gardening. The scratch I knew better than my own scars. It was Clara's ring. My knees nearly buckled right there on the sidewalk. I stumbled into the shop, my voice trembling as I pointed at the display. "That ring, where did you get it?" The man behind the counter shrugged. "Customer brought it in last week. Young woman, brunette, fancy nails. Said she didn't need it anymore." My chest burned. I whispered the words like poison. "Isabella." The man tapped the glass. "Beautiful piece. Sentimental value, huh? You looking to buy it back? I'll give you a deal. Buy it back. Buy back my own wife's memory. The ring I had entrusted to my son's wife. The ring I had given her with tears in my eyes." I walked out before I did something I'd regret. My fists were shaking, my throat raw with rage. She had pawned it. She had taken the last piece of Clara I had left, treated it like a trinket, and sold it off for cash. That night I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the old family photos spread out before me. Clara's smile stared back, calm, forgiving, eternal, and I knew I couldn't let this go. But more than that, I needed to know how Daniel could let it happen. So the next day I went to their house, not to eat, not to talk about the weather, but to confront them. And what I heard when I asked about the ring was laughter. I sat in my car outside their house for a long time before I knocked on the door. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my chest heaving with every shallow breath. A part of me wanted to believe I was wrong, that maybe the pawnshop clerk had mistaken someone else for Isabella. But deep down I knew. Finally I walked up the steps and knocked. Daniel opened the door, grinning as if everything was normal. "Dad, come in." What a surprise. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the living room. Expensive shopping bags were piled on the sofa, designer names I didn't recognize, but the kind of brands that didn't come cheap. My jaw clenched. "Where's Isabella?" I asked. "She's in the kitchen." He led me in, oblivious. Isabella stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she plastered on a sweet smile. "Michael, what brings you here?" I didn't waste time. "The ring." Her smile faltered. "What about it?" "The pawn shop downtown," I said, my voice shaking. "I saw it in the window. Clara's ring. The one I gave you. Care to explain how it ended up there?" For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, to my shock, Isabella laughed. Not nervously, not apologetically, but openly, mockingly. "Oh, that old thing. Please, it wasn't even worth much. I used the money for something better." She gestured toward the shopping bags in the living room. My stomach twisted. Something better. "That ring was my wife's. It was the last piece of her I had left, and you sold it for war shoes." Daniel stepped between us, holding up his hands. "Dad, calm down. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." My voice rose, cracking with grief and fury. "Your mother wore that ring every day of her life. She carried it through hardship, through sickness, through raising you, and you let her memory be traded like pocket change." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck like I was being unreasonable. "Dad, look, Mom's gone. You have to move on. It's just a ring. Just a ring." Those 3 words cut deeper than any knife. I stared at my son, barely recognizing him. This was the boy I raised. The boy who watched his mother struggle and still smile, and now he was telling me to move on. I turned to Isabella. "Do you have any idea what that ring meant? Do you even care?" She rolled her eyes. "Honestly, Michael, you're being dramatic. It's not my fault you're still hung up on the past. Rings are replaceable. Memories don't pay bills or buy nice things. We live in the real world." Her words slapped me harder than any hand could. Cold, callous, heartless. I felt my knees weaken, but I forced myself to stand tall. "You mocked my wife's memory. You mocked everything she stood for. And then it happened. The moment that shattered me." Daniel chuckled. At first, just a small laugh under his breath. But when Isabella smirked beside him, he let out a full laugh. "Dad, seriously, listen to yourself. You're acting crazy over some jewelry. You're embarrassing yourself, embarrassing myself." I stood frozen, staring at the 2 of them, my own flesh and blood, and the woman who had married into our family. They weren't ashamed. They weren't sorry. They were laughing. Something inside me snapped that night. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't storm out. No, I just stood there in silence, letting their laughter echo in my ears. And while they thought they had humiliated me, what they didn't realize was this. They had just lit a fire I would never put out. I left without another word. Daniel called after me, still chuckling, "Dad, don't take it so seriously." But I didn't look back. When I got into my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My entire body shook, not just with grief, but with rage. They thought I was weak. They thought they could steal from me, mock me, spit on Clara's memory, and get away with it. They were wrong. Because what Isabella didn't know, what Daniel had conveniently forgotten, was that the house they lived in, the roof over their smug, laughing heads, still belonged to me. I held the deed. I paid the mortgage. And with one signature I could take it all away. And that's when I made my decision. If they thought they could laugh at me, I would show them just how wrong they were. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the deed to the house spread out in front of me. The papers were old, a little yellowed, but clear as day. The house was mine. Legally, financially, every way that mattered, it was mine. Daniel and Isabella had been living there under the illusion it was theirs, but the truth, I had been covering the mortgage from the very beginning. When Clara got sick, I didn't want Daniel to carry the burden. I told him I'd help temporarily, just until he got on his feet. But temporary stretched into years, and somehow Daniel convinced himself that the house was his. He had no idea. I traced my finger over Clara's signature on the deed. She and I had signed it together, decades ago. This was the last thing we built side by side. Now that same house had become the stage for betrayal, and soon, it would be the stage for justice. The next morning I put on my best suit and walked into the law office I'd been using for years. Mr. Reynolds, my attorney, raised an eyebrow as I sat across from him. "You look like a man with something heavy on his mind," he said. I slid the deed across the desk. "I want to start the process of eviction." His brow furrowed. "Eviction? From your own house?" "My son and his wife," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "They've forgotten whose roof they're under. It's time I remind them." He studied me for a long moment. "Michael, are you sure? This is drastic." I leaned forward, my jaw tight. "They pawned Clara's wedding ring. They laughed in my face when I begged for it back. If they can spit on her memory like that, they don't deserve the home she and I built." Mr. Reynolds nodded slowly. "Then we'll proceed, but you'll need to keep quiet. The element of surprise is your ally here." I smiled for the first time in days. "Believe me, I won't say a word." For the next few weeks, I played the part of the doting father. I showed up for dinner when Daniel invited me. I listened to Isabella chatter about her new handbags, her weekend getaways, her so-called influencer lifestyle. I even brought a bottle of wine one evening, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was counting days. Every time I saw them lounging in that living room, feet propped on the coffee table, shopping bags strewn across the couch, I felt the fire in my chest burn hotter. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they had one. But I knew better. Because while they laughed, the legal machinery was turning quietly behind the scenes. Notices were being prepared, signatures were being finalized, and the clock was ticking down to the day I would take everything back. One night after dinner, Daniel clapped me on the back. "Dad, I have to admit I thought you'd still be mad about the ring. Glad to see you've moved on." I forced a smile. "Life's too short to hold grudges, son." Isabella smirked, sipping her wine. "Exactly, he gets it. If only they knew." That night, when I got home, I opened a drawer in my study and pulled out Clara's old journal. She had written in it almost every day, little notes about the weather, about Daniel's school projects, about her hopes for the future. On one page, she had written, "This house will always be our legacy, a safe place for Michael, for Daniel, for the family we've built." Tears stung my eyes as I read her words. They thought they had stripped that legacy from me. They thought they could laugh in my face and keep living in comfort. But I would honor Clara in the only way I could now, by reclaiming what was hers. The final step came sooner than I expected. Mr. Reynolds called me one Friday afternoon. "Everything's ready. The court order is signed. We'll serve them the papers next week." My pulse quickened. It was real now. No turning back. "Thank you," I whispered. "Michael," he said, his voice low, "I've seen a lot of evictions. They rarely end peacefully. Be prepared for ugliness." I closed my eyes, picturing Isabella's smirk, Daniel's dismissive laugh. "Trust me, ugliness already came into my house. I'm just cleaning it out." That weekend, I visited the pawn shop again. The ring was still there, sitting in the glass case like a prisoner behind bars. The shop owner nodded at me. "You're back. Want it this time." I stared at it for a long moment. Clara's ring, her memory, everything I thought I had lost. "Not yet," I said, "but soon. Because once I had that eviction notice served, once Isabella and Daniel were out on the street, I'd buy it back, not with shame, not with hesitation, but with pride. And when I slipped it back into the small velvet box where it belonged, I would know Clara's memory had been defended." The night before the papers were served, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, staring at the house across the way. Their lights were on, their laughter spilling through the windows. I imagined Isabella opening shopping bags, Daniel scrolling on his phone, both of them basking in the comfort of a home they thought was theirs. I let myself smile, because in less than 24 hours, their laughter would turn to shock, then to anger, then to fear, and I would be there to see it all. The morning the eviction papers were served was brighter than it had any right to be. The sky was clear, the air crisp, as though the world itself was preparing for a show. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, pretending to read the paper, but my eyes never left their house. Across the street, I saw Daniel's car in the driveway, Isabella's voice drifting through the open windows. Laughter again, always laughter. But I knew their laughter was about to die. At precisely 10 o'clock, a white sedan pulled up. A man in a suit stepped out, papers in hand, the process server. My heart pounded. This was it. He walked up their path, knocked firmly on the door. Daniel answered, smiling at first, then confusion crossed his face as the man spoke. Isabella appeared behind him, her arms crossed, irritation already flashing in her eyes. The man handed over the envelope, spoke a few words, then turned and walked away. Simple routine. But inside that envelope was the end of their comfortable little world. From my porch I couldn't hear every word, but I saw enough. Daniel tore the papers open, scanned the first page, and his expression crumpled. He looked at Isabella, his lips moving fast, desperate. She snatched the papers from his hands, her eyes darting over the text, and then she froze. Her face went pale. Then red. She spun toward Daniel, yelling, her arms flailing. He tried to calm her, but she shoved him back. The argument grew louder, spilling into the yard. Neighbors began peeking out windows, pretending to water their plants while watching the drama unfold. And me, I just sipped my coffee, steady as stone. An hour later, Daniel showed up at my door. He didn't knock, gently he pounded, his face red with fury. I opened the door slowly, almost lazily, as though I had all the time in the world. "Dad, what the hell is this?" he shouted, shoving the papers toward me. I looked down at them, feigning ignorance. "Looks like an eviction notice." "An eviction notice?" His voice cracked. "From you? You're kicking us out of our own house." I raised an eyebrow. "Your house? Remind me." "Daniel, whose name is on the deed," he faltered. His lips parted, but no words came out, because he knew he had always known, deep down, the house wasn't his. It never was. Isabella stormed up behind him, her voice like acid. "This is insane. You can't just throw us out. We live here." "You live here because I let you," I said evenly. "But that privilege has been abused. Consider this a correction." Daniel's hand shook. "Dad, you can't be serious. We have nowhere else to go." I leaned against the doorframe.com as I said, "Maybe you should have thought about that before laughing in my face when I asked for my wife's ring back." The color drained from his face. Isabella scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh my God, is this still about that stupid ring? You're ruining our lives over a piece of jewelry. My voice dropped low, steady, dangerous. That stupid ring was my wife's heart, and you sold it like a pawn ticket. Silence hung heavy between us. Even Isabella seemed to shrink for a moment. Daniel finally whispered, "Dad, please," but I had heard enough pleases in my lifetime from creditors, from Clara in the hospital begging me not to worry, from myself whispering into the dark, pleading for just one more day with her. No, their pleas meant nothing. "You have 30 days, I said flatly. "Make them count." And with that, I closed the door in their faces. The fallout came fast. Within days, whispers ran through the neighborhood. People saw the server, saw the arguments spilling onto the lawn, saw Isabella storming off in her car while Daniel slumped on the porch. The golden couple was cracking. One evening, as I took out the trash, Mrs. Henderson from next door leaned over the fence. "Michael, I don't mean to pry, but is it true? Are you evicting them?" I met her gaze steadily. "Sometimes people forget who built the roof over their heads. I'm just reminding them." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Well, good for you." Word spread. And with every whisper, with every sideways glance Daniel and Isabella received from neighbors, their pride chipped away. But they didn't give up easily. Daniel came to me again a week later, this time quieter, almost pleading. "Dad, please, let's talk. We'll pay rent, okay? We'll do better. Just don't do this." I looked him dead in the eye. "You had your chance to respect what mattered. You chose greed and mockery instead." Isabella wasn't so subtle. She stormed over one afternoon, shouting loud enough for the whole street to hear. "You're pathetic, Michael. A bitter old man, punishing us because you can't move on from your dead wife." The words cut deep, but instead of anger, I felt something else. Pity, because those words revealed exactly who she was. Cold, shallow, incapable of love. I didn't even respond. I just turned and walked back inside, leaving her screaming at the closed door. As the 30 days ticked down, the tension grew unbearable in their house. I saw lights on late into the night, heard arguments through the walls, Isabella pacing, Daniel's voice cracking under the weight of it all. And me, I slept like a baby, because for the first time since Clara's ring left my hands, I felt peace. Justice wasn't just coming, it was already here. By the second week, the cracks in their perfect facade were no longer cracks, they were craters. Isabella's car disappeared for days at a time, only to return with more shopping bags she had no money to justify. Daniel sat on the porch in the evenings, chain-smoking, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. They looked less like a couple in love and more like inmates awaiting a sentence, and in a way they were. The first attempt to fight back came in the form of guilt. Daniel showed up one morning with coffee in his hands. Like the old days when he'd surprised me with a visit, he placed the cup gently on my table. "Dad, remember when you taught me how to ride a bike? I fell so many times, but you never gave up on me. You held me up until I could do it alone." I studied him, waiting for the real reason he was here. He swallowed hard. "Don't give up on me now. Don't throw us out. I know we messed up, but you're all I've got left." For a second I felt a flicker of the boy he once was, but then I remembered the laughter, the sound of my own son mocking me, while his wife pawned Clara's memory for a shopping spree. I pushed the coffee back toward him. "I held you up, Daniel, but at some point you stopped pedaling on your own. That's not my failure, it's yours." His eyes filled, but I stayed firm. He left without another word. Isabella's approach was less subtle. One evening she barged into my living room without knocking, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She looked around with disdain, her lips curling. "So this is where you sit, plotting how to ruin us. In this dusty old house, surrounded by dead memories." I didn't even look up from my newspaper. "Respectfully, Isabella, this is my home. If you don't like it, the door's behind you." She laughed bitterly. "You're pathetic. You think you're teaching us a lesson. You're just a lonely old man, clinging to a ghost." Daniel told me about Clara, how she babied him, how she never pushed him to grow up. "No wonder he's like this. Maybe your precious wife is to blame." The paper trembled in my hands, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "You should leave," I said quietly. Her smirk faltered when she saw the steel in my eyes. For the first time, she backed out without another word. "Belongings will give you 1 hour." Isabella exploded, hurling curses at everyone within earshot, while Daniel crumbled. He sank onto the porch steps, his head in his hands, shaking. Neighbors whispered louder now, judgments, pity, gossip. Some took out phones. I watched it all with the kind of stillness that comes only after years of heartbreak. This wasn't triumph in the usual sense. It wasn't gloating or cheering. It was closure. The house that had once been filled with Claire's laughter, with our life together, was finally being reclaimed. The hour crawled by. Isabella stormed back and forth, dragging suitcases, throwing things into bags, muttering insults under her breath. Daniel barely moved, except when deputies urged him to pack. At one point he looked up at me, eyes wet and red, his voice cracking. "Dad, please, don't do this. We'll have nowhere to go." I held his gaze. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "Son, you had a home. You chose to destroy it." He broke then, really broke, sobbing openly in front of everyone. Isabella rolled her eyes. muttered something about pathetic weakness, and slammed the car trunk shut. And just like that, I saw at the end of them. Not just their time in that house, but their time together. Isabella wasn't built for loyalty. She was built for taking until there was nothing left. When the deputies finally cleared them out, the locksmith stepped forward, changing the locks one by one. The sound of the drill biting into the metal echoed across the street. Final and unforgiving. Click, turn, seal. With every lock replaced, the weight on my chest grew lighter. When the last door clicked shut, the deputy handed me the new keys. "House is yours again, Mr. Whitmore. All done." I closed my hand around them, the cold metal biting into my skin. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. As Isabella and Daniel climbed into their car, a hush fell over the street. She gunned the engine, refusing to meet my eyes. He sat hunched in the passenger seat, broken, silent. The car screeched away, leaving behind nothing but a faint trail of exhaust and the echoes of their downfall. And then, silence. The house stood there, empty, waiting, not just a building, but a memory reclaimed. I turned back toward my porch, the keys heavy in my palm. It was done, but my revenge wasn't complete, not yet. There was still the matter of Clara's ring. The house was mine again, but it felt hollow. Rooms echoed with silence. The air was thick with dust and the faint smell of strangers who had occupied what was never theirs. I walked through slowly, fingertips brushing along the walls Clara once decorated with photos and laughter. Yet even with the house returned, there was still an emptiness. Because Clara's ring, her wedding band, the symbol of everything we built, was gone. I remembered the night I gave it to Isabella. I'd stood in front of her, my hands trembling, telling her how Clara used to twist that band around her finger whenever she was nervous, how it reminded her that no matter what storms came, she wasn't alone. I gave it to Isabella thinking it would keep Clara's memory alive. Instead, she pawned it for handbags and perfume. That wound hadn't healed, not yet. And I couldn't rest until it was back where it belonged. So the next morning I drove into town. The pawn shop wasn't too hard to find. It was the kind of place with flickering neon signs and barred windows, sitting between a liquor store and a payday loan office. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and desperation. Shelves lined with guitars, watches, tools, and jewelry cases gleaming under buzzing fluorescent lights. A man behind the counter looked up. He was heavy-set, balding, with a sharp, wary gaze. "Help me?" he asked flatly. I nodded toward the glass case of rings. "I'm looking for something I believe was sold here. A gold wedding band. Inscription inside. C+M, forever." He leaned down, scanning the rows of glittering bands. After a long pause, he pulled one out carefully, holding it up between thick fingers. This one. The sight of it made my chest tighten. There it was, Clara's ring. The one I slid onto her finger decades ago, when the world felt wide open and endless. "Yes," I whispered. "That's the one." But of course, it wasn't that simple. He cleared his throat. "It was pawned a few weeks ago. Technically, it's mine now. You want it back, you'll have to pay how much?" 800. The number hit me, not because of the money I could afford it, but because it represented the sheer insult of the whole thing. Clara's priceless memory, reduced to less than a month's rent in the city. I handed over the cash without hesitation. The man slid the ring into a small velvet pouch and pushed it across the counter. When I picked it up, I swear I felt warmth pulse through my palm. Clara was back with me. That night, I sat on the porch of my reclaimed home, the ring gleaming in the fading light. I slipped it onto my finger, even though it didn't fit quite right, and for the first time in years, I spoke aloud to her. "We did it, Clara. They thought they could take what was yours, what was ours, but it's home now. You're home now." The wind stirred the trees gently, and I swear it felt like she was there, listening. The neighbors noticed, of course. A few stopped by to congratulate me, to say how relieved they were that justice was served. One even chuckled and said, "Bet they won't be laughing now, huh?" But I didn't smile. Revenge wasn't about laughter for me, it was about balance. They had taken, I had restored. In the weeks that followed, I saw Daniel only once. He came alone, his eyes hollow, his shoulders bent. He stood on the edge of my lawn, not daring to step closer. "Dad," he murmured. She left me, packed her things, and walked out. Said I wasn't worth staying for without the house. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I looked at him for a long time. Part of me wanted to open the door, to pull him inside and try to rebuild what we'd lost. But then I remembered the laughter, the betrayal, the way he let Isabella pawn the most sacred memory of my life. "Son," I said quietly, "I hope one day you learn what love really means, but until then, I have nothing more to give." His face crumpled, but he didn't argue. He turned and walked away, disappearing down the street, and for the first time, I didn't chase after him. That night, I placed Clara's ring in a small wooden box on my nightstand, next to her photograph. Every morning since, I've woken up and seen it glint in the morning sun, reminding me that no matter how cruel the world gets, some things cannot be stolen forever. They can only be misplaced, waiting for the right hands to bring them back. So tell me, what would you have done? If someone pawned your spouse's wedding ring, would you have let it go, or would you have fought to get it back like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I Read every one. And if this story struck a chord with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it. It means more than you know. Because at the end of the day, revenge isn't always about anger. Sometimes, it's about protecting the love that deserves to live on.